Thank God it's Friday. And normally not quite a day when we do this, but always nice to take that little trip and a nice opportunity to discuss some of the biggest stories taking place in cricket today. So all I can say is thank you for joining us. You are here on the Coach's Corner and always welcome as we take our little trip, as usual, off to the boundary. Yes, people, the title says it all. 44th episode of the Off to the Boundary show. And as always, it is good to have you all along with us. And I know the stream was scheduled to be at 6 p.m. UK time. I'm not too sure that people got the message. And I will obviously wait for Hanno to join in. And hopefully we will see some people coming in. And, we have had some interesting cricketing action over the past few weeks, and certainly a great deal of controversies as expected, a lot of talking points. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say controversies per se, but certainly, as I've said, a great deal of talking points. And we will obviously, deal with a lot of this. And of course, the big series, of course, that is occupying the news is, of course, the English tour of India. And, of course, the big headlines are that with England having lost the fourth test at Ranchi after heavy defeats at Visakhapatnam and Rajkot following their shock, memorable win in Hyderabad, they are now 3-1 down with the series lost, only pride to play for in the final test. So the question, obviously, is this the end for Bazball or a chance to evolve? And obviously, I want to wait for more and more people to join this stream in the next few minutes. But, it's really sad because I also want to give a huge shout out to Steve Jenkins, better known, of course, as Mr. B, and the shows that he's been doing for his channel, Mr. B Talks England Cricket. And right on cue, we've got our first guest, who's more than a guest. He is, of course, the host with the most. And I do apologize, of course, to him for having started the stream without him. But welcome to our host, Hanno. Big up, Bert. How have you been?
Big up, Manny. Big up. I've been good. How about you, Manny? How about you?
Yeah, I've been better in some ways, not so good in others. And we've already got, of course, our first viewers saying, big up, Manny, big up to you, of course, Chelsea fan. And, of course, we've got the other Chelsea fan here. And obviously, this is a cricket stream, so we will not be talking football. But I will say well done to Chelsea, of course, for overcoming Leeds United. And I know with the point and the smirk, you're still not convinced. But briefly, if Chelsea do manage to win the FA Cup this season, and I accept that there may not be too much of a chance, would you be willing to back Pochettino?
No chance. Absolute fraud. But before we get into more of the cricket, of course, a special happy birthday to Chelsea fan. Be up yourself. Happy birthday to yourself. Hope I've had a great day. And hopefully the end to your day is also fantastic. So yeah.
Okay, and of course, from the Arsenal fan, I wish Chelsea fan as well a very happy birthday. And thank you for joining us and always being a friend of the channel. So, obviously you're welcome to take a look at the other banners and add one or two, because I'm sure you might have another thing to talk about. But obviously this is the first topic. And I was actually bigging up Mr. B and his channel, Mr. B Talks England Cricket, because he was, of course, doing some reviews at the end of each day's play. And, of course, I remember joining him for the end of the first day when Joe Root hit that sparkling century. And also at the end when, of course, it was time for the post-mortem on Monday. Now I know what Bob Geldof was talking about when he sang about not liking Mondays. And I'm sure Garfield the cat feels the same way. Now, the sad part is that, Our entire first innings, based on Joe Root's wonderful century, and I am going to try and get to the scorecard in a minute, is, that innings from Joe Root really was an example of how he was able to cut out all the nonsense and the frills and actually play something according to his natural game. And a lot of the people on Twitter, including Michael Vaughan, who was never short of a quip or three, was talking about how forget about Bazball, this is Root ball in full flow, and we love to see it. And obviously Kenny Ken and I were talking about how back foot play is always the best way to play cricket whether it comes to fast bowling or spin bowling. And of course, if we take a look at the scorecard, apart from Zach Crawley at the top of the order, who made a brisk 42 before holing out to Akash Deep, who had in fact bowled him earlier when he was on four, only for that to be a no ball. None of the top order really did themselves justice. And we will find out later that Ollie Pope suffered the ignominy of getting a pair. He avoided a king pair by the skin of his teeth, but still a dreadful match for the England vice captain. And England were in some crisis when Crawley got out. But, Joe Root obviously came in and sort of steadied proceedings. And that innings, which only featured 2 sweep shots, was an example of how he decided, you know what, I'm going to cut out the nonsense. Although he did briefly consider bringing up his 100 with a sweep shot, a little bit like what Kevin Peterson used to do, only to end up getting out more often than not. He decided, you know what, he instead had a gorgeous cover drive off, I do believe it was Siraj, if memory serves me right. And that brought up a classy century on day one. And of course, the way he was able to hold everything together with 2 fine century partnerships with both Ben Foakes and 113 between him and Foakes, and also 102 between him and Ollie Robinson, who played quite beautifully for his maiden Test 50, only to play a disgusting shot to get himself out. That really stabilized the innings, and England were dreaming about the possibility of a score about 400. I was thinking that maybe we wouldn't want to take more than a session, but then, this is the problem that seeing the way England play, we've become so used to seeing them get quick runs that we think that, they don't need to play for time. But Test cricket is all about playing for time, judging the ball on its merits, and that is how pretty much Root show that it should be a lot better. And Root himself was guilty of some pretty poor shots in the previous tests. And of course, when you take a look at the wickets, of course, Siraj, Akash Deep doing really well, obviously, with the ball. Siraj had been tonked around the ground earlier on, but came back quite magnificently to remove both Foakes and Hartley. And then, of course, after Robinson left, Shoaib Bashir and James Anderson didn't last long, thanks to Ravi Jadeja's 4 for 467, 3 wickets at the end for him. And, of course, Ashwin Ravichandran coming back into the side. He never really left, just left for a day. And no wickets for Kuldeep Yadav and Yashashvi Jaiswal. And we had India in trouble at 177 for 7 when Ashwin got out, LBW to Tom Hartley. But then up stepped a man of the match, Dhruv Jurel, in his second test with a sparkling innings of 90, 4 sixes and 6 fours. His partnership with Kuldeep Yadav for about 76 runs really broke the hearts of England, along with a nice useful 40 between him and Akash Deep. And England were just not quite able to get out the tail. Jaiswal continuing his fine series with a wonderful 73. But once again, India's middle order struggling to really make any kind of inroads as such. Another disappointing score there for Sharma, among others. And as far as the wickets are concerned, Bashir bashed them up magnificently. 5 for 119, 3 for 68 for Tom Hartley. That's 8 wickets for the spinners. And Anderson bowling really well, but Robinson, despite his heroics with the bat, proving disappointing with the ball. And then England had their chance to press home the advantage with a lead of 46, although a lead of 100 or anything close to 150 would have been wonderful. But aside from Crawley, it was a sorry sight. Root not lasting very long either. Pope confirming his pair. Bairstow providing a bit of resistance with 30, but then poor strokes and poor judgment. And at 145, we put ourselves further on the back foot. 5 wickets for Ashwin on his comeback, 4 for Kuldeep Yadav. and Jadeja also picking up his fifth wicket of the match. And when it came to India, they were, of course, in the ascendancy with Jaiswal and Sharma going great guns, and then Gill also continuing his good work. Bashir gave us some hope, but once Jarrell and Gill were together, they pretty much sapped our energy, sapped our hopes. And despite Bashir's magnificent 8 wickets, it was soon to be all over. And it's another tale of woe, a tale of what might have been. And the ironic thing is that we actually saw a show that we were willing to move away from Bazball a little bit by playing a little bit more intelligently in the first innings, but the second innings was really disappointing. And so you've been very quick to ask this question whether Bazball is at its end. I'd like to be positive and say that we have a chance to evolve from this. You can agree with me. There is a time for everything, as it says in the Bible. To every test, there is a session and a time to every shot in the textbook. A time to go down the track, a time to play the sweep, and all of that. And, for me, I want to see this as an opportunity to evolve. And thankfully, Joe Root has now found his niche as being more of an anchor man, at least the anchor man for now, around whom people can feel comfortable and play their shots. And you can see, if you saw that innings, it was a masterclass in back foot play, judging the ball beautifully, evoking memories of the great Sunil Gavaskar's farewell innings of 96 against Pakistan at the Chinnaswamy Stadium in Bangalore in 1987. He deserved a century, but tragically got out on 96, and India tragically lost that test by 16 runs to lose the 5-match series 1-0. But you have there, it just goes to show that no matter what sort of approach you apply, Test cricket is the great leveler. The pitches around the world are going to be a great leveler. And you can never, ever, ever try to cheat your way into winning test matches all the time. You've got to respect the conditions and respect the game. So hopefully the fifth test will see us, continue that approach. Although with Jasprit Bumrah and possibly Virat Kohli coming back, the deck is stacked against us. But I know. What say you, Bert?
Um, what can I say? I think England. I don't think it's a case of Bazball. The end of it. I just think, like we almost said with the Ashes, there's a time and a place for it in Test match. In any Test match, you can't just play the one Test match the whole way through Bazball. That's the main point. Um, and in India, I don't even think you could say they tried to play Bazball. That's why England got out so easily. I think it was more of a case just there wasn't that quality for England in this Test series. Um, well, you have got many big stars like Stokes, um, Crawley, Duckett, um, but they just didn't turn up this Test series. Um, and yeah, that's what happened, unfortunately. Also, a few youngsters, again, but you would hope that experienced guys like your Crawley, like your Duckett, your Root, your Bairstows, your Stokes, um, and folks really perform to assist the likes of Hartley, Bashir, even Ollie Robinson hasn't been part of the test setup that much. Ollie Pope as well um, hasn't been um, part of it so long. So it just the experience players didn't step up, and we saw that throughout the state series. The one that you did win again was, I wouldn't say was surprising. I think it was just you caught. I think it was just one where India just didn't flourish like you guys, like England did the rest of the games. So yeah, I think there was one off game India had, and that was in the first one. The rest they have been really on point. and when India are on points, it's seldom you stop them, especially at home. Um, but as a way forward for England, I think you can keep the basketball, but again, you have, if you're going to stick with basketball, have the right players to play for it. Because I don't think the likes of, if I get your batting lineup um, up, I don't think Bezos is the way. I get he can score runs quickly, but no, not really for me. Um, I don't think Ollie Pope. Well, I can't really say Ollie Pope because he has showed, but he still needs some experience. But the likes of Johnny Bairstow, to extend Zach Crawl, no, not Zach Crawler, to extend Ben Duckett, because he's not going to um to smash the fours and etc. And in, like we saw stats, um even now we see some stats that he never leaves the ball alone. And I think for basketball, it's good that you want to hit every ball, but basketball way, if you really want to go attacking, that's not the way. Hit the bad balls, um, and if there's a good ball in your area, then hit it. But he just wants to play everything, and we saw that this series, except for that close to 15 made in the first test, I don't think he made really any contribution. So yeah, yeah.
Well,
So
it's
just
interesting that you mention. It's interesting that you mentioned Bairstow. I mean, if he plays the fifth test, he will, of course, join Stokes, Root, Anderson, and several other Englishmen in having played 100 tests. And he is, in fact, 26 runs away from, hitting 6,000 runs in Test cricket. And I'm sure, in as much as he may not be in the best form, I would back him to reach that landmark. And you may have a point. And Kenny was talking in a few earlier streams about how Bairstow is Bazball. But since the injuries that he's suffered, I don't think he's been quite the same player. And that thing you said about having to make sure that you are patient enough to play for time, that is of course one of the reasons why Josh Butler was dropped from the Test team. And I don't think he'll be picked ever again, but he will of course enjoy himself as the limited overs captain in ODIs and T20s. And Mr. B and I were talking about several selection issues, how it was utter incompetence to go with only two specialist openers in Crawley and Duckett for this series, because aside from Duckett's big century, he hasn't really contributed too much. And even Crawley, actually has a very poor test average in recent times. And, he may be able to score enough runs to sort of keep his place in the team, but he might not be the answer going forward. And once again, it's a bad opening conundrum. And you mentioned the youngsters, Bashir and Hartley. There's a story in Cricinfo which says that despite their exploits, they might be in a position where they might not play very much because Bashir is with Somerset. Now, Matthew Jack Leach, who was, of course, on the tour with England but had to leave, will be undergoing knee surgery. And so I'd like to think that until then, you know, uh, Bashir should get more opportunities. But with Tom Hartley at Lancashire, they've recently acquired the Australian Lion, who is, of course, roaring again, and we will talk about him later. But if Nathan Lyon does, in fact, end up playing more, then what could happen to Hartley and Bashir? And they will obviously need to get a little bit more cricket to keep themselves sharp, because I was telling Mr. B that with Leach and being injured all too often, Hartley and Bashir didn't show any signs of the yips like Simon Kerrigan did. And it could very well be that they, along with Rayan Ahmed, will be the future of English spin bowling. So we've been ruthless in some ways, but have given, a lot of leeway for others. Maybe it is time, as you say, to be a little bit more ruthless with the likes of some of our players. And certainly Jackie Leach might be high on the chopping block list. What say you?
uh, Jack Leach. I don't think Jack Leach should be just thrown away. I think his injury definitely has put a spin on it, especially with the likes of Bashir and Hartley. doing really well in the Test series. And what's other spinner you guys had?
Bashir's the off spinner, and Hartley's a left arm spinner, and Rayad
Yeah,
Ahmed is a leg
Hartley.
spinner.
Yeah, Red Ahmed as well. So those three and Jack Leach, now four spinners. Um, Probably it's hard to choose because in England you're probably only going to use one. If you tour to Australia, the Ashes, that's also probably going to maybe take two spinners. If one gets injured, you play the other one. Um, and if you let's you go to India, Pakistan, or so yeah, um, yeah, something like that. You're not going to use more than two spinners in your squad, so it does put the likes of Jack Leach on a chopping block, with the likes of Riyad Ahmed, Bashir, etc. performing well with the Stacers, because I think those three have been the shining lights this Test series. No doubt about it.
Yeah, I might agree with you. The batsmen, for the most part, have been inconsistent. They'd have one really good score and then flatter to deceive. And Stokes, aside from his heroics in the first test, has been a bit of a disappointment with the bat. I'm glad that, despite all the controversy, he didn't bring himself on to bowl because, bowling in the nets and bowling in a test are chalk and cheese. But, you know, England obviously will try to look to salvage something from this series and then take it even further. And it could very well be that we might say goodbye to Bairstow, but there could be some changes for the fifth test. Um, it would be tragic if Bairstow were to, be replaced for this test, but he might possibly get a home series in England, and our next assignment will be against Sri Lanka. So he should be picked for that home series. He'll get his 100th test, and then maybe he might end up calling it quits afterwards and decide to focus on the limited overs side of things. But then, we don't seem to have too many batsmen who can replace him. Of course, we do have Harry Brook, but he wasn't available for this series. But then India didn't have Virat Kohli for the entirety of the series, so we don't really have too much of a cause for complaint. And so there are going to be a lot of selection issues. We rested Mark Wood for this test and brought Ollie Robinson in, and he did well with the bat, but wasn't at his best with the ball, bowling several no balls. And there will be some issues. Does Mark Wood come back in? I'm sure if hopefully Mr. B is watching this on playback and maybe he'll join in later, we will catch up with him. But what sort of changes, briefly, and we're not going to go too further because we've got some other topics to discuss. What sort of changes do you see England making for the fifth test of the series?
Let me just get the squad quickly. Um, Quickly, just have squad. So hmm, I think Ben Folks will definitely come in, see what he can do. Um, um, I think Atkinson could be one. I think Dan Lawrence should be given a game in that middle order. Maybe replace a Pope, push Joe Root up a bit. Um, so yeah, um, so yeah, I think that's it too. Ben Folks, um, then Gus Atkinson, possibly, but and Dan Lawrence. Those three, I would say.
So Atkinson, Lawrence, and who else did you say?
Lawrence and Folks.
Folks is already in the team.
Is he in the team? Oh, that is
Yeah,
played.
he's the wicketkeeper.
Yeah, I thought he didn't play the previous test match. Um, Let me just have a look then. Oh, yeah, sorry, Fox played. Okay. Uh, yeah, then Dan Lawrence and Atkinson. Um, in for Robinson. Well, then again, can't take really. Robinson out. He scored a 50. So
Well, the
um,
problem is that, I did mention that his bowling wasn't the best, and that Stokes didn't bring him on to bowl in the second innings because of his rather erratic display in the first one. So it could be that
so
Robinson does get replaced.
yeah, but I think Gus Atkinson definitely with a shot, and Dan Lawrence. I would say Dan Lawrence in for Pope, or for Bairstow. So yeah,
Yeah, and obviously, if the openers continue to struggle, then then one of those two guys' places should be in question. I keep banging the drum, as Mr. B will tell you, for a certain Keaton Jennings, whose father Ray is, of course, the former South Africa wicketkeeper who sadly couldn't play international cricket due to apartheid. I think he did play a few tests in isolation, but was a part of that Transvaal mean machine. Jennings actually would have been an excellent pick for this series because he is really good in subcontinental conditions, and in fact hit a big century for the England Lions in one of their warm-up games against Indian opposition. So again, the fact that we didn't bring a third specialist opener in the squad, incompetence really, and we're going to have to take a look at those things as we move forward.
yeah. We'll see what happens with the England selections definitely.
Right. So now, of course, it's time to move on to another series, of course, and that is, of course, the New Zealand-Australia series taking place. And I'm sure you'll appreciate the title. For Cameron, it is easy being green, and in that jungle, the lion continues to roar. So it's the first test, of course, in the New Zealand capital, Wellington, and you know. I will, of course, share the scoreboard. Obviously, I've got the scoreboard right up. Let me just see if this rickety computer will cooperate with me for once. And yeah. So, of course, so once again, Australia have been eager to persist with the experiment of Steve Smith opening the batting so that Cameron Green could be, accommodated. And obviously, despite some useful runs at the top of the order from Smith and Khawaja, and Mitchell Marsh also making a very brisk 40 in the middle, not one single batsman really contributed very much. Special mention, though, for Hazelwood, and we'll talk about him later, but Cameron Green was the real star. 5 sixes and 23 fours in his mammoth innings. And if we take a look down at the fall of the wickets, obviously he was able to lead a little bit of a recovery with wickets falling at regular intervals. But this last wicket partnership of 116 between Green and Josh Hazelwood, who hit 4 fours in his useful knock of 22 before being the last man out, that really broke the back of the New Zealand bowlers who were on top. Maybe, making people wonder whether Neil Wagner, who of course announced his retirement, should have been picked for this test. And of course, he had learned that he would not be in the starting 11, so he decided to announce his retirement. We'll talk about him later. Obviously, the star of the show, though, was Matt Henry, who said, "Forget about Neil, I can do a job for you." And while the captain went wicketless, Henry did his best and got a 5 for. William O'Rourke continuing his a good form from the recent South Africa series. This new chap, Kugelane, I think, is that the way you pronounce it? I'm assuming that there's some Dutch or South African roots in this name.
Let me Scott Kuchelen.
Kugelane, yes, of course. And I can tell by the way you pronounce the that he does have some South African roots there. No wickets for Daryl Mitchell, and Rachin Ravindra bowling some part-time spin, I believe, for a wicket off his 7 overs. But then when it came to the turn of New Zealand, they were completely shot out. 2 ducks at the top of the order, a needless run out of, Citizen Kane, former captain Kane, and Rachin Ravindra also getting out for a duck. That really broke New Zealand's backs. Blundell chipping in with 33. Glenn Phillips making amends with a very brisk 71. And even Matt Henry bringing his bowling form to the bat with a brisk of 42, which included four sixes. But New Zealand was shot out for 179, and the star, of course, was the Lion himself, Nathan, who roared magnificently. Was a bit expensive at times, but picked up the wickets that mattered, including four of the last five to fall. He pretty much mopped up the tail, as we would say. One wicket for Stark, two for Hazelwood, one for Captain Cummins, and one for Mitchell Marsh. And despite ending up 204 runs ahead, Australia perhaps hastily deciding not to enforce the follow-on, because New Zealand bowled 8 overs for 13 and were able to snare two wickets, including Stephen Smith for a duck, which fills me with some satisfaction. I'll tell you why. And they also got out Labuschagne for two, leaving the night watchman Nathan Lyon and Usman Khawaja at the crease. And this probably might give New Zealand a little bit of hope that they could possibly shoot Australia out for a very low total and maybe make a fist of it during the chase. And Southee, of course, 4 overs, 2 maidens, 2 for 5, and being well supported by Matt Henry. So that pretty much says it all. Now, obviously, from Australia's point of view, the Cameron Green experiment is perhaps working. But what really angers me about Smith opening is that it effectively means that Cameron Bancroft might never play for Australia again. And unlike Smith and Warner, this poor chap really was, probably the mule of the whole sandpaper gate crisis. So, Green, of course, proving his value. Certainly, Australia's answer to Harry Brook. In fact, I would say that Green is in many ways, a level above Harry Brook in that he is, of course, a genuine all-rounder and providing that fine innings in a way. But obviously, the bowling, as far as Australia are concerned, we saw how much Australia missed Nathan Lyon. And he came back, obviously. The Lion was roaring. You just can't keep him down. And Australia have been able to find a way to put themselves in a dominant position against New Zealand. So we could see, of course, with New Zealand snaring two batsmen, Smith and Labuschagne, this could very well prove to be an exciting test, because if Australia do flop in their third innings, we could be set for a very exciting chase unless the pitch goes on to continue to aid the bowlers, in which case New Zealand might still be up against it. But as long as you got Kane Williamson in your team as a batsman, anything is possible. But I did, in fact, add this as a title with Neil Wagner waving farewell. And obviously, with his very unique blend of left arm seam, with the ball angling, with the angle that he's been able to generate. And of course, he did win that memorable test against England by 1 run, snaring James Anderson down the leg side. I just wonder, though, if by opting to drop him for this test and seeing him announce his retirement, I get that Southee and Henry have done well, but do you think Wagner's retirement could be a loss for the Black Caps?
It definitely could be, but I have to speak about a special person. Made done really well in the test match against that when we played against them. It's Willow Rock. Yeah, I think Willow Rock. This test is also showed some fight. Took 2 wickets, about 27 overs, 10 maidens, 87 runs. Can work on that run, but definitely Willow Rock, youngster. He's definitely a tall lad. He can do something. And Scott Kuchelen, 32 years old, not that young, but inexperienced in his test career. Right some fast. He also seems really like he can do something. Also took 2 wickets in his first test match. I believe this is his first test match. Took 2 wickets in the first innings. So no, I think those two can replace his boots really really well. So yeah.
Okay, well, of course, Wagner will still be playing first-class cricket, and I'm sure he will be in demand for quite a few Big Bash teams and other, T20 sides. But of course, that will be for another day. And of course, Wagner was born in South Africa, so you seem to you seem to have a knack of being able to produce a lot of fine cricketers who end up playing well for other nations. A brain drain in many ways. I don't want to talk about that further, but how do you do it?
Yeah, special talents. We have special talents.
And of course, we English have benefited from your South African expertise over the years. So all I can say to you is Bear Danke, especially for, Alan Lamb, Robin Smith, and several others, Kevin Peterson, Jonathan Trott. We owe
Oh
you a
well.
debt. And so the way the test is going, obviously, it is now, of course, some Southeast 2 wickets have put this on a bit of a knife edge. Where do you see this test going? Do you think New Zealand might have a chance of being able to make this test exciting and possibly snatch a win, or do you think Australia might still hold the aces?
That's one. This particular test or the series. I
This
think
test, we'll talk about. Yeah.
this test. No, probably not. Um, don't really see it. Well, no, I don't see it. I think Australia already got 217 run lead, 13 for 2 now. Put probably 150 on that 270. 17, you add 150, that's 367. They possibly put that closer to 400. No chance. I think if New Zealand do win this, it will probably be a historic fourth innings chase if they do win this test, because no way are Australia going to let them have a have to chase a target below one. Um, well, below 400, 350 at least.
I get what you're saying, but then, as I've said, as long as you have Kane Williamson in your team, anything is possible. Ollie Pope made it happen in Hyderabad. Maybe Wellington is the stage for Kane to prove that he is still able. And of course, we're still focusing on the test arena because Irish eyes are smiling as they pass the Afghan test, a historic first ever test win for Ireland against an upcoming Afghanistan team. I just want to make sure I get the scorecard so that I can share it. And I'm really grateful, of course, that I've learned, obviously, not to keep sharing Cricinfo because of these ridiculous advertisements which keep popping up at the worst possible time. But this particular test, the only test of the series, played at the Tolerance Oval in not too sure where it is, to be honest, but in Abu Dhabi. So this was effectively Afghanistan's home test in a way. And in the first innings, we saw a good effort from Ibrahim Zadran at the top of the order and some useful runs from Karim Janat in the middle, but no one else really able to contribute. Mohammad Nabi, of course, missing for this particular test match. Captain Hasbatullah Shahidi, useful 20, but they're not really doing much more than that. And of course, the star of Ireland's innings was opening bowler Mark Adair with 5 for 39. Well supported by Barry McCarthy and Craig Young, and of course Curtis Camphor chipping in with a couple of wickets later on. Now, when Ireland batted, it was a case of The middle order stepping up to be counted when the top order couldn't quite get their act together. Former Zimbabwe international Peter Moore getting out for a cheap score of 12. Captain Balbirnie himself not lasting long. In fact, Navid Zadran basically was the one who tried to make things happen. And special mention for Zia Rehman as well. But Camphor tragically missed out on a half century, but played a good hand, as did Harry Tector, who's pretty much becoming more of an all-rounder these days in the island setup. Paul Sterling, the old warhorse, chipping in with a half century. Wicketkeeper Lorcan Tucker with 46. And then some useful runs lower down the order from Andy McBride and Mark Adair. And Ireland getting themselves a very useful lead of 108. And Zia Rehman and Navid Zadran, 8 wickets between them. 5 for Zia, 5 for 64 for Zia Rehman. And 2 wickets for Nijat Masood and Zahir Khan. And nothing really much else to be said. Some great efforts there, but they just weren't able to get to grips with the Irish middle order. And of course, with a lead of 108, Ireland pretty much set about their task of, getting at the Afghanistan batsmen. This time around, Hasmatullah and Ramanullah did their bit and made sure that there would be a little bit of a recovery, but then wickets being lost at regular intervals didn't really help them. And apart from Nur Ali Zadran and maybe Navid Zadran down the order, no one else again contributing. Some important names with big names with the bat pretty much failing to step up. Ireland's bowling once again proving to be the big difference. Adair backing up his 5-4 with 3 for 56. Barry McCarthy with another 3, and Craig Young with 3 of his own. Theo van Voorkom, I think that might be how you pronounce it. I'm assuming he might be also South African or Dutch. Maybe you can do some research on him. And as it stood, Afghanistan were bowled out for 218, giving Ireland the target of 111. Nelson, as it were. And after some hiccups with Zadran taking 2 wickets and 2 balls, Peter Moore and Curtis Camphor for ducks, it was left to captain Andy Balbirnie and the old warhorse Paul Sterling and also Lorcan Tucker, the wicketkeeper, to guide Ireland home. Captain Balbirnie finishing not out on 58. No centuries, obviously, but a very engrossing test match played over the course, and Afghanistan doing their bit, but not quite able to make it happen. And so within the course of 3 days, we had a result. And so obviously when you take a look at Afghanistan and Ireland, you see a couple of teams who were associate nations not too long ago. Afghanistan continuing to play very regularly international cricket and proving, at least in the limited over scheme of things, that they do rightly belong. But in Test cricket, I'm not too sure that they've been able to quite get their act together, and this pretty much has proved it in a way. I don't know if you can necessarily make too much of this particular win as far as Ireland are concerned, but, a win is a win. You can never look a gift horse in its mouth. And this might give them a great deal of confidence, especially when you consider that their batsmen never really were able to get the big scores, but they did obviously do well when it mattered for the most part. How would you gauge the performance of both teams in this particular test match?
I think it's a massive win for Ireland. Of course, they climb into the history books with now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then only 5 other teams have won their first test quicker than Ireland, which is Australia, that took 1 test. England took 2. Pakistan took 2. Afghanistan, the team they beat, took 2 tests to win their first ever. West Indies took 6. And Ireland took 8 tests to win their first ever test against Afghanistan. Of course, they climb ahead of the likes of India, Sri Lanka, South Africa, Zimbabwe, Bangladesh, and even New Zealand. Of course, there's was only the eighth test in 6 years. So, but they have their first one test debut. Um, so massive one for them. Afghanistan, unlucky. We know they're not a test team. You would expect them to beat Ireland. They didn't. Massive upset for Ireland, especially in the in Abu Dhabi, in away from home, not in your condition. So yeah, man, massive shout out to Ireland.
Yeah, glad you agree on this. And now, of course, we're going to come to a topic which you selected, and I want you to take a look at the banner. I'm not too sure you think that the banner is a little bit harsh. I added something there, but do fill us in on this little controversy from the BCCI. And I can tell you right now that India's cricket success really is in spite of the BCCI, not because of them, and it's the players who really bring about the success. But over the years, the BCCI have been pretty much the at the forefront of several controversies. Talk about it. Tell me more.
Okay, so
First of all, do you agree with this?
I don't. I absolutely don't. So, for those that don't know, a few days ago, the what's it? The Indian Cricket Board released um, the um, who's on the central contracts. They list they got that out a few days ago. I will try and find the list. Should be somewhere on ESPN Cricket Info, but they brought that out, and there were three talking points, really, of what's happened. Let me just try and find it. There we go. Okay, so we quickly shared my screen. I wish to find the article ESPN Quick Info wrote, but unfortunately I couldn't. But you guys will see. So basically, the annual player contracts, how that work is, if you don't have one, that doesn't mean you can't play for the Indian cricket team. It's like your central contracts in in um in England. It basically means you will get paid except for your match fees, like excluding your match fees, you get paid more money as well. If I'm correct on that, I don't know, man. You could maybe correct me on that, but if that is how it works.
Yeah, first of
Um,
all, I've got some news for you. I actually do have the Crick Info article, so
okay.
if you want me to share that, I'll be happy
Yeah,
to.
yeah, share that. That would be nice. So
Okay, so this is the article right here, and I think this is what you're talking about. So Shreyas Iyer and Ishan
yeah,
Kishan have lost their central contracts with Captain Virat Sharma, former Captain Virat Kohli, Jasprit Bumrah and Ravi Jadeja being retained in the top category. And,
yeah,
the list, of course, was expanded to 30 from 26 last season. And Iyer, of course, was one of the key performers in India's run to the World Cup final, but he lost his contract, a Grade B one, despite fulfilling the minimum criteria set by the board in terms of matches played. And, of course, not long after the limited overs, obviously he played the first two tests in the ongoing series against England where he struggled for form and was left out. And he informed the MCA, the Mumbai Cricket Association, that he'd been suffering from back spasms and wouldn't be available for the Ranji Trophy quarterfinal against
yeah,
Baroda. However, he was able to make himself to put himself up for selection as part of the squad for the semi-final against Tamil Nadu taking place tomorrow. Kishan had a grade C contract, and he played 2 tests, 19 ODIs, and 10 T20 internationals. And sadly, in the ongoing cycle, he's only played 2 ODIs and 3 2020 internationals, despite being a part of various other India squads. So basically, you're sort of right. You have to play a certain quota each and every cycle to be, eligible for a certain
Yeah,
contract.
and this is where the controversy comes in, because you'll see there's a certain name. If you look on the list, a certain is in the grade A category. Um, it caused controversy in the IPL auction. A certain Hardik Pandya has been retained, and we know Hardik Pandya has not played a test in a while. What is this? Also, Rashif Pant has also been, first he's been moved down, but still he hasn't played ball. If I get that. Um, but the main one is Hardik Pandya, who hasn't played that much cricket. If I
Yeah, he did, of course, miss out on in selection for the Indian World Cup squad due to injury. So India obviously had to, do without his services. So it is a
yeah,
surprise in many ways. You're right.
and he didn't play in this test series. Don't think he played in the other. I don't think he's played all year. I don't think he's even played since the World Cup. Hardik Pandya. He hasn't played for India, I believe, since that. So I get why they maybe released Aya and Kishan, but that's the big one there. Hardik Pandya, why is he in this list? He hasn't played um, that much cricket. Why is he there? So yeah, that's a controversy, but I don't know. Because
I would.
Aya and Kishan, they could easily just say we don't want to play cricket for you, because it's not like they done something horrible. It's missed a big tournament. Like it's what the I don't even know these cups and these trophies. They said they weren't going to play in, etc. So
Yeah, the
yeah,
Ranji Trophy is pretty much India's main first-class competition. It's a bit like what the Curry Cup used to be, and probably still is, over in South Africa. And also, you've got the County Championship back in England. And of course, we've got the release from the BCCI, which said that the reason why Aya and Kishan weren't considered is because all athletes have to be. Have to give precedence to participating in domestic cricket during periods when they're not representing the national team, and that means they've got to play first-class cricket as well. And that is, of course, what Cheteshwar Pujara has been doing. But obviously, he wasn't considered for the Test series. He's not been retained, and it could very well be that his storied international career after over 100 tests might very well be over. So sad for him, but that is the way it is. And a lot of new recruits, mainly 2020 specialists, and they've also obviously recommended Akash, who starred in the fourth test at Ranchi, along with a few other players, mainly fast bowlers, and yeah, I completely get why this is a bit of a controversy, and it's almost as if there's one rule for one and another rule for another. Maybe in many ways they consider Pandya to be a fairly important cricketer, because in terms of the all-round situation in Indian cricket, Pandya is probably the one who can show a lot more in terms of promise. I know that Jadeja is probably slightly above Pandya as an all-rounder, but Pandya bowls some pretty handy seam bowling and is also a more than decent batsman. And at Test level, he has had more than his share of moments as well. I will say that it was indeed very harsh on Aya and Kishan and maybe one or two others while Pandya has been retained. The very least they should have done was drop him. But I think they probably considered had Pandya not been injured, he would have played a very big role in India's World Cup squad. And of course, it was thanks to the injuries to him and Patel that other players got their chance to be a part of the squad, including Ashwin Ravichandran, who has at least come back into prominence in recent times, and I couldn't be happier for him. But you know, it's just so it is a little bit ridiculous in some ways, and obviously the BCCI, thank you very much indeed, have a lot for which to answer. But
Mm,
it just goes to show that when it comes to cricket and contracts, you really are one misfortune away from seeing, yourself being dropped down a level, whether it's due to injuries or circumstance, and because of the competition for places, you just might not be able to find your spot back in. And now, for someone like Pujara, despite his experience, he's found out that maybe he's been phased out completely, as has Ajinkya Rahane and one or two others. So it's really it's sad in many ways, and I think maybe they wanted to give some consideration to Pandya's ability and the fact that he did sustain a pretty poor injury. And once Pandya gets back to fitness, you will expect him to be back in contention for a spot in India's 11, because having a good fast bowling all rounder is really, an asset. I know that Jasprit Bumrah can bat a little bit, and he can certainly swing the bat a great deal, but he is, for all intents and purposes, a lower order batsman. And tailenders, as you know, Hanno, will just swing the bat a bit. So I think maybe they want to give Pandya a bit of leeway, but it is a bit harsh on Iyer and Kishan in many ways. It just goes to show that sometimes, if you're a player, if you have a level of seniority and you are at least performing well to an extent, you can get your name in, but there are some people who will end up missing out. So there is some controversy. I will say, though, that maybe my banner was perhaps a little bit harsh, but there have been occasions where the BCCI have proven themselves to be a bunch of people who really don't care about the game in India, and are probably, interested more in lining their own pockets. But then that might be true of many other administrators in many different sports all around the world. But all I can say to Shreyas and Ishan is, boys, don't be disheartened. You can still make your way back in. Even someone like a Pujara is only a few injuries away from getting back in, as is Rahane in a way, because as well as Jaiswal and Gill have done, we have to see whether or not how consistent they will be in the upcoming games. So
yeah,
a bit disappointing in many ways, but that's the way it is in international cricket. It's tough, competitive, cutthroat, and you've got to be better yesterday and tomorrow.
yeah, true, but very big, big controversy, and we'll see what happens with Kishan and Naya. Do they still put themselves up for selection for Indian games coming up? We will see. But yeah, we have also to Wolf in the chat. Good to finally see you back. Missed you, absolutely missed you. Um, um, yeah, but they failed to beat Australia. They should be ashamed of themselves for that alone. Was referring to that World Cup final loss, massive loss. That was.
No, I think that's a bit harsh. I mean, look, they got their team selection maybe wrong a little bit, and I think Australia just out captained them and outplayed them on the day, and India were caught cold. But
Yeah. Um,
yeah,
in WWE news, CM Punk is still cancer. Well, I mean, it doesn't have cancer. It's just like a madness. Cody is overrated, true. Well, I wouldn't say so, right. I think he hasn't been booked properly, but yeah. Rock and Roman Reigns reign supreme. Yeah,
what is the
definitely.
appeal of WWE to all of you boys, eh?
Well, I don't watch it. I just keep up with it news wise. Maybe see something. I don't even know who's the champions right now. Um, yeah, eat chips, not drink it. Of course, legendary. Um, tagline that. Eat chips. No, don't drink it. Drink chips. It's the best. If you drink chips, try it. If you haven't,
Is
best.
chips a type of South African drink, or what am I missing here?
It's like crisp. Drink it. Don't eat it. Drink it. Don't eat it.
Well,
You
of
must.
course, well, the chips, of course, for which we English are known, it can only be eaten. It's as if what it is, and of course, the chips are falling where they may. So, um, do we have anything more to discuss, or shall we be done? Right
I
on an
think.
hour.
I think that's basically that. Any other series going on? Um, what's the IPL? IPL starts on the 22nd. Yeah, that's fine. That's a time to go. Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. We'll discuss it at a later time. Something big happens in that, but I think that's that really.
Very good. Well, all I can say is thanks a lot for organising this stream, Hanno, and thanks to everyone in the chat who's come in. Chelsea fan, as always, a big fan of the chat. Mystic Werewolf, I echo what Hanno has said. It is great to have you back. And to all those of you who might hopefully watch this stream on playback, we are grateful, of course, to have your support. And we will hope to hear some of your particular observations. But Hanno, I know obviously Chelsea did well in the cup. I mean, they won, maybe not well per se, but they did what they had to do. So obviously we've got football coming up next. How well do you see Chelsea doing?
This weekend we've got Brentford. Expect us to win, but nothing is expected. Um, in the Chelsea circle, of course, I will release the Premier League predictions later tonight, maybe tomorrow morning. But yeah, but Chelsea, we've got
Okay.
Brentford away. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if it
And as
goes.
far as cricket is concerned, what are you looking forward to? England and India will be playing on the 7th of March. We did talk about a few changes. What are you looking forward to as far as cricket is concerned?
Cricket. What's going on cricket wise? I'm just looking forward to the IPL really. Anything maybe keep up with the New Zealand Australia series, but other than that, nothing really else. England keep on losing, which is always good to see. Uh, but no, I think that's the one IPL and um, the Australia New Zealand one. See what happens in that one.
Okay, well, obviously we will be doing some, watch-alongs later on. Hanno and I should be possibly on Oris Talks football stream later tonight at 8 p.m. UK time to talk about the football. We've got European football, of course, next week. Should be fun from the Champions League, Europa League, and I think the Conference League. I'm not too sure. But until then, there's nothing much more to say. Do please continue to catch me and Hanno on the Coach's Corner, where we'll be doing a lot more programs. We will be discussing a lot more in terms of cricket and other sports. But until then, do enjoy this weekend. Take care of yourselves. Stay safe and stay happy. Don't do anything that Hanno and I wouldn't do. But from the both of us, as always, it is farewell to thee and goodbye and God bless to all of you. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.